Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Sessions with Koren. Last week, we spoke about a condition that affects millions of adults worldwide, but it often goes undiscussed, and that is adult deficit hyperactivity disorder. We looked at how it manifests itself in relationships, at work, and generally, and we looked at a long list of coping strategies. We also give some tips for employers and members of family on how to support an employee or family member suffering from ADHD. Viewer, if you suspect that you or someone close to you may have ADHD, I encourage you to have a discussion with your primary care physician for a referral in order to obtain a diagnosis and/or treatment. Today, we have a topic that you, our viewers, have asked for: how to manage in a toxic workplace. This topic is for you if every workday or most workdays feel stressful. You wake up and you sigh at the thought of having to go to that workplace. Oftentimes you'll find a lot of hostility there, discrimination, favoritism, micromanagement, and sometimes even bullying. You don't feel safe there. You don't feel happy going to work. You actually dread going to work. If you or someone you know has to work in this type of environment, then you cannot afford to miss this topic. Our guest for today, that you'll meet soon, has worked as an employee and as a CEO. And she's an expert on matters related to feeling empowered at work. She operates a podcast and she loves sharing her knowledge with others. So stay tuned. Call up your friends, let them know that we will be right back, and I will see you after the break. Welcome back, welcome back. With me now is Mrs. Janice Sutherlands. Janice is an award-winning executive coach providing leadership development and executive coaching for organizations globally with a focus on the maturing workforce. She has a professional career spanning over 25 years in both the UK and the Caribbean, where she was the first female CEO in the telecom sector for Antigua and Barbuda and Montserrat. She is an international speaker, best-selling author, and host of This Woman Can podcast. Janice, we are so pleased to have you in studio with us today. How are you doing?
I'm fabulous. Great to be here, Koren.
Okay, so happy to have you. And this is a topic that our viewers actually requested.
Oh, wow.
Yes,
wow.
Yes, managing in a toxic workplace. So first of all, I know our viewers have their experiences, but just for everyone's sake, what are some of the signs of a toxic workplace?
Well, first of all, let me say a toxic workplace is different for everybody because we all have different tolerance levels. And you said at the top of the program, you talked about micromanagement, you talked about bullying. harassment, physical and sexual. They could be work-life balance, or trying to work the work-life balance. There could be the level of work you're given. There could be favoritism. There are a myriad of things that could amount to a toxic workplace, and it's different for everybody because it basically boils down, I suppose, to, if I can say it, how much you're willing to tolerate. You know, so the toxicity levels in a workplace really does vary from organisation to organisation.
Yes. Absolutely, and from person to person.
And from person to person, yes. Definitely.
So in terms of these toxic things that we talk about, sexual harassment, physical harassment, bullying, micromanagement, all of the things we talked about, how do these things actually affect the employee?
Well, they affect the employee in obviously many ways, you know, because it could be the fact that you're not sleeping. If you're overworking, you could experience burnout. You don't know who to talk to. Your body has a way of telling you when things aren't right. Maybe you don't want to go to work. Maybe you would find ways to avoid going to work. You could even be disruptive. Sometimes people think poor employees are because they're just bad employees, but actually there could be an underlying issue as to why they react or carry on the way they do at work.
Yes.
So again, it's different for everybody. There's no hard and fast set symptoms for everybody. Again, it boils down to what you're willing, or your body is willing to take. What I would say, however, is that toxicity isn't just about people, it's about culture. It's the culture of the organisation.
Absolutely.
It's the values of the organisation. And it's also down to leadership. I work with a lot of leaders, and it's the leaders that often are in power to make the changes that are required in organisations. So it's not just about the one individual or the individuals, it's also about the people at the top who set the agenda as to how the business will feel, how it will look, and how it'll operate.
Yes, absolutely. I like the idea of talking about workplace culture.
Yes.
What is an ideal workplace culture? Best case scenario.
Best case scenario is
Best
butterflies
case.
and rainbows.
Yes.
You know, again, it's, you know, it's very subjective. Again, it's about the values. One of the things you want to look at is, you know, if you want a more laid back environment, then a very hard, fast moving environment may not be for you. You know, so it just depends on the type of business. It depends on what's the environment this business works in.
Yes.
But needless to say, whatever the culture is, it shouldn't be detrimental to the persons that work for it.
Okay, I understand. Does it affect productivity of employees?
Oh my goodness.
Does it affect their absenteeism?
Yeah,
What
I mean,
is-
as a leader, come and put my leadership hat on. If you're looking at an issue in your organisation, you see productivity isn't where it needs to be. You see you see absenteeism, you see lateness. Again, it's what I said, it's not just about the individual. You really have to do that inward searching and really be honest about the culture, the environment you're generating as a business. Is there an underlying issue as to what's happening in the organisation that makes people not want to work over? You know, nobody necessarily wants to work over, but if you have a environment where people feel comfortable and people are willing to go that extra mile, sometimes they haven't been to ask, it's a good culture. If you have to pull teeth to get someone just to stay till the time they're contracted to, you may have an issue.
Absolutely.
So, you know, so it does affect productivity. People may decide to, I'm not going to do any more than I have to do, you know, or they may choose to say, I'll do a little bit extra here, or I'll help out my colleague just across here.
Yes.
So yes, it most definitely affects productivity.
Yes. Okay, so when the culture is ideal and things are going well, obviously you're not going to get it 100% of the time.
No.
But at least make the effort. Does that mean that the employees, how does it affect their relations to the customer? The work, we have this workplace,
Sorry,
right?
I shouldn't laugh. I shouldn't laugh.
We have this workplace.
Yes.
And things are either going well a lot, or medium, or
Yeah.
not so well at all. And this is happening inside. How does it affect the customers?
Okay, so let me say, some leaders will look at their employees and say, look, I don't like how you're interacting with my customer. We need customer service training. It's not customer service training. That's just one element of it.
Yes.
What it is how does that individual feel working in that environment? If I feel good working for you, if I feel good working for the organisation, that will emanate, that will come out, that will translate to how I interact with your customer. You know, I'll smile. How many times have we been into organisations with the most sullen look?
Yes.
And you're looking at that person, you go, I'm not sure I want to speak to you.
You're almost afraid to
You're
go and speak
afraid,
with them,
or you're not,
yes.
or you lack confidence that they'll be able to address the issue maybe you're coming in
Yes.
with. So yeah, it most definitely impacts your interaction. Now, the employer can go, well, you're not doing your job right, but the employee will go, well, I've answered the question, I've addressed the issue,
Yes.
but that's not the end of it. It's will that customer come back?
Yes.
Has he enjoyed the interaction he had with you? Did you make him feel good about coming in parting with his money or asking for the information? So it most definitely impacts your customer interaction.
Okay, great. So I think that was really important that you highlighted that, so that employers understand that how the employers treat their workers or their employees is oftentimes reflected in the customer service. It's reflected in that employee being willing to go the extra mile. You don't have to ask and beg and make the world of promises. You value me, so in terms I value your business. If we were to look at the whole gamut of things, we talked about the micromanagement, the bullying, the harassment. In your work in the Caribbean, is there any one or two that you found stood out a lot that contributed to workplace toxicity?
Yes. Leadership styles.
Leadership styles.
Sometimes there can be a lot of challenges, multi-generational challenges.
Explain that one.
Multi-generational challenges. We're at a time where we can sometimes see 5 generations at work. From boomers, Gen X, Gen Z, millennials, we've got them all at workplace.
Where does that stop though? There's Gen Z, we are to Gen Z is the last one that we have, right?
Yes, or Gen Alpha. I think you're coming into Gen Alpha now. I'm not sure, but there's a few. Boomers being the old, and probably maybe the most well known, followed by Gen X, followed by millennials. But millennials themselves, some of the older millennials are going to be in their 40s. The top end of millennials. So sometimes can be a mismatch towards the communication styles and the leadership styles. We know the younger generation sometimes don't want to talk to you physically. They would rather be on a text or send a message. Whereas the maturer generation will say, well, actually, I need you to talk to me.
Yes.
You know, and that in itself, adapting the styles can be a big challenge for some people, because if this is the way I've always done it, why should I change?
Yes.
And that's a leadership challenge. Definitely, because you have to learn to be adaptable. If we haven't seen that, we saw that definitely through COVID. We see that carry on afterwards. Now people are seeing what could be done. You managed to do it in COVID, Mr. Leader, Mrs. Leader. Why can't we do it now?
Yes.
You know, and you have to feel confident enough or be able to say, well, this is the reason why. This is what we can do. Is there a compromise we can reach? How can we find a situation that best suits both parties or all parties? So the leadership styles are a definite trend coming through, and it's very, very broad. It's very, very broad, because conversely, it's not just the older employees. It could be the younger employees who are in a position of leadership, and they struggle to communicate with the older employees.
Yes.
You know, and then that again has its own dynamic, because who is this young thing talking to me? Who does she think he or she thinks she is?
Yes.
And they're going, well, why doesn't he respect me? I'm their boss.
Yes.
Just because you have that label doesn't garner respect. There's a whole process, there's a whole leadership style, there's a respect, and there's a lot of work that goes into it.
Yes.
And coaching, and the reason I do executive coaching isn't just about because you're being a poor employee. Even the most developed, most successful athletes have a coach. It's about improving your game and what you do.
Absolutely, yes. Wow, that's quite interesting. That intergenerational thing is a real thing.
It is.
I've gone to workplaces and we have people arguing about, do I say good morning when I come into work or not?
Yeah.
Or if I say good morning and the person doesn't respond to me, am I obligated to respond?
Yeah.
And yes, we have situations where some of the younger persons prefer to send a message. The older person says, that's disrespectful. Why don't you come into my office and have a conversation?
Yeah, yeah.
And so it is incumbent upon the leader, the manager, the HR manager, the CEO, to be able to understand these are the dynamics in the workplace.
Yes.
I have persons who are in the retirement stage.
Yes.
I have new persons coming in. How do I get them to blend?
Yes.
How do I improve the communication? How do I bridge the generation gap?
Yeah.
Yes.
And you said the key thing there, communication. It is all about communication. It's not about smoke and mirrors trying to hide things. It's about, wherever possible, being open. You can't possibly tell everything to employee. There's some things that just cannot be shared.
Yes.
But there's simple things like regular meetings. You know, team meetings. How are people feeling? What's happening? What's causing disruption in the organisation? Do you have regular one-to-ones with your team members to find out what's happening? Do you have a facility where maybe people could report anonymously, you know, without retribution? Because sometimes people won't speak up because they fear retribution. Again, that's toxicity in an organisation.
Retribution, are you speaking of victimization?
Yeah, victimization. When I say retribution, I mean there's a comeback.
Yes,
there's you know, if I do this, if I take this course of action, what's going to happen?
Yes.
You know, it could be not just about victimization. It could be the fact that maybe I've scuppered my promotion chances. Maybe I don't get the best shifts. Maybe I don't get listened to. There's lots of different ways, subtly, or not so subtly, that organizations and persons can impact each other.
Yes, yes, yes. Very correct. Very correct. I understand that. But whose responsibility is it, though? Is it the responsibility of the general manager, CEO, or is it the responsibility of the HR manager in terms of building this teamwork and improving communication?
It's not the HR manager's job.
It's not the HR manager's job?
It's part of their job. You know, because again, I work with a lot of HR leaders as well. I've had a lot of interaction with HR. And HR is usually, if there's a problem, push it to HR. But HR can only make an impact if they have the buy-in of the persons that will help lead the issue. I can't, as a HR manager, maybe talk to you and say, this is how it's going to run, and then the leader does something totally different. Yes. It has to be in sync. It has to all be together. The leader has to be part of the equation, part of the solution, as well as the HR and employees.
Okay, so lead by example.
Absolutely.
And that general manager, CEO, you're saying it's appropriate for that person to bypass the middle managers and the supervisors and go straight to an employee to have a conversation?
Why wouldn't you?
Okay.
Why wouldn't you? You know, again, it depends. Again, it could be the culture where the middle manager thinks, why is he checking up on me and blah, you know, what's the... But actually, if you've had the communication that, look, what I do is I walk the floor, as we call it. We call it walk the floor. We get out with our staff. I regularly did it myself. I'd go out onto the store floor. I'd interact with the customers. I want to see what's happening. As a leader, how can you make the changes, the difference? How can you instigate certain change without actually knowing the impact it'll have, without knowing what happens in your business? This isn't about me spying on you. This is about me learning more about my business, so how I can make it better for you and for my customer.
Yes.
You know, so it's about changing how we look at it, but it's also down to the leader communicating why they're doing what they're doing. If you suddenly pop up and just go, and you're in everybody's business, and you're not actually explaining why you're doing what you're doing, communication.
Yes.
You know, of course there'll be maybe a level of suspicion because it's not been done before, and people start running with things. What's happening? My job is at risk. They're going to change this. Why they're coming fasting with my business? There's lots of things running through people's heads. But if you communicate the rationale for why you're doing what you're doing, then I'm not saying to eliminate it,
Yes.
but it goes some way to allaying people's fears.
It makes more sense
Yes.
because if people don't always like change.
No, they don't.
And
They
so
don't.
if you start bringing in all these new things, people are going to be like, where are you going with that?
Yes.
And there's some people in the workplace who are very resistant and they
Yes.
keep saying, I want change. But when new things are put in place to
Yeah.
bring about that positive change,
Yeah.
they don't necessarily get on board.
Yes, but they see change, they see change in isolation to their role.
Okay.
That one element of change is part of a bigger thing,
Yes.
you know, so this is your part and this is why the change needs to happen. This is what will happen as a result of doing that. Again, it's communication.
Yes. Okay, a lot of it is communication.
Yes.
So let's just say there is a workplace and the employees have complained, like frequently I go in to do training with employees and they say to me, Miss Norton, you're telling us all these things, but nobody's telling it to the upper management.
Yeah.
So we're going to go in making all these changes and we're not going to get the support. You need to go and give this training to upper management, you know, when you do things like emotional intelligence and communication. So what do you think about that? When we're instituting this change, we understand communication is important.
Yes.
We understand we want to change organizational culture.
Yes.
So if you or I, as trainers or anybody else, goes into an organization because you want to change the culture, where should we actually start? Should we start with training the line employees? Should we start with the higher management or mix it up?
I personally try and start with the leaders.
With the leaders.
Because I need to understand what they see as their challenges.
Okay.
What are their objectives? What are their goals? That then helps me to look at the rest of their business and understand where the gaps are between what they hope to achieve and what's actually happening.
Okay.
That then determines your training because it's not in isolation. I then want to have buy-in with the leaders. I want to have buy-in with HR. I also want to, dare I say, I want to say sell the training to the employees because they also need to understand, you put me through training again, why?
Why?
Why? You know, and if you're training in isolation, we all know that, one day training doesn't change the issue. Doesn't change the challenge that you had the training for. This comes from repetitive action. This comes from consolidating the learning, and that comes from leadership. That comes through all the middle managers. It comes from HR. It goes all the way through because that change you want will not happen overnight. It has to be consistently reinforced to make a longer term change.
Consistent. I love that word. I love that word. So managers, it's not fair for you to just take employees, send them to one-day training and expect that their behavior will be so drastically modified.
Yeah.
We must start at the top.
Yes.
We must lead by example and we must make it a consistent effort and actually from different angles, even sometimes having some team building exercises. Even simple as ensuring that there's some coffee or tea sometimes for employees. That sends the message that we care.
Yeah. And you know, and from a leadership perspective, a little bit of vulnerability doesn't hurt. And what I mean by that is that if you are wrong, say you're wrong. If you need to apologize, apologize. That little action can make such a big difference to the employees. Or, you know, it's maybe, I'm sorry, I didn't listen before, or I didn't understand the challenge. Let me understand it more. Explain to me. You know, be open, you know, and we talk about open door policies. I mean, can't have people, you don't have people running in 24/7, but you do want to be able to make them feel encouraged, that they can feel comfortable enough to say what is happening, what is impeding their work, what is making them uncomfortable, what they're doing.
Yes, so it's important for management to know it's okay to say I'm sorry.
Yes.
And to sometimes simply say thank you.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We often, we know that people like to have their wages, their salary, and they love to be paid fairly. But when you speak with employees, oftentimes they also mention feeling valued.
Recognized, yes.
Recognition.
Recognition, yes.
That is also as important as receiving good wages.
Yeah. And not just at the end of the year.
Not just at the end of the year. All right, give them some bonuses throughout,
well,
or it doesn't have to be.
I'm talking about the recognition.
Okay.
You know, it's the one-to-ones I was talking about. It's the saying thank you. It's the just saying hi. How's that? What's happening? How are things going? You don't normally recognitions at the end of the year, and they have some sort of awards. but what's happened all right through the year.
All through the year.
Yeah.
That's pretty good. Recognition throughout the year.
Yes.
Well, the last question I'm going to ask you, we've talked a lot about what the leaders, the HR, the general manager can do. As an employee, if I feel like I'm working in a toxic environment and the management are not necessarily adopting some of the procedures we've talked about, what can that employee do to ensure his or her own mental health in such a space?
Okay, so you have two choices.
Okay.
It's a should I leave or should I go? Yeah,
Okay.
that's your choice.
Leave or go or leave and stay?
Leave and stay, that's right.
Okay,
So,
should I go or should I stay? That sounds like a song. Should I go or should I stay?
That's the one, that's the one. So if you decide to stay and you want to make sure you've communicated wherever possible how you feel, you want to look at the boundaries you're setting. Some people, I've worked in organisations where they will send emails late at night and there's an expectation. Well, it may not be said, but there could be an expectation, or the employee feels that they need to respond. Do you? You know, realistically, I worked with bosses that sent emails. I was just, when I raised the issue that, look, you're sending me emails, I remember saying, you know, I go to bed with you and I wake up with you because the last thing I see at night was an email from you, and the first thing I see in the morning is an email from you, and you're not my husband. You know, and I explained that to my boss, and he says, well, I'm just sending it because it's on my mind at that particular point in time. You don't have to answer. Okay. You know, so it's about setting boundaries and recognizing the boundaries. It's about looking at what works for you from a self-care perspective. Maybe a walk in the morning, maybe a break, maybe a little meditation. So it's looking at that. If you decide that you want to look at pastures new, when you're there, when you're looking at that, you want to look at the culture of the organisation. Do their values align with you? You want to feel confident that you can can deliver what you say. You can deliver to the organisation and what the company wants. And there's a lot more, but that's just a little touch of some of the things people should look at.
Clearly, we're going to have a part 2 to this discussion because we haven't even talked about the employees when they go into the interview, what questions they should ask
that's
to
why,
know the organizational culture.
Absolutely.
So we'll get to that. Thank you so much, Janice. You've answered every question very eloquently, and I'm sure our viewers have a lot to go on from this point forward. So thank you so much for being with us today.
No problem. Glad to be here.
Hello viewers, it has been such a pleasure having that conversation with Janice. Creating a positive workplace culture is so important for employee well-being and for the organizational success. Here are 6 points on how to foster a positive workplace culture. Promote open communication. Encourage transparent and open communication channels where employees feel comfortable expressing their ideas, concerns, and feedback. Foster a culture where dialogue is valued and everyone's voice is heard. Create a supportive environment. Create a supportive atmosphere that values teamwork and collaboration. Establish mentorship programs, team building activities, and recognition initiatives to build a sense of camaraderie among employees. Prioritize work-life balance. Recognize and respect the importance of work-life balance. encourage reasonable working hours, provide flexibility when possible, and discourage a culture of overworking. A balanced life contributes to employee satisfaction and well-being. Invest in employee development. Offer opportunities for professional development and growth. Provide training programs and resources that empower employees to enhance their skills and contribute meaningfully to the organization. Recognize and reward achievements. Acknowledge and celebrate individual and team accomplishments. Regularly recognize employees for their hard work and dedication. This can be done through formal recognition programs, informal praise, or even small gestures of appreciation. And foster inclusivity and diversity. Create an inclusive and diverse workplace where employees from different backgrounds, experiences, ages, and perspectives are valued. Embrace diversity and promote equality to ensure that everyone feels respected and valued. Time now for our golden nugget. We don't develop courage by being happy every day. We develop it by surviving difficult times and challenging adversity. So my friends, if you're going through a rough time at work, if you feel like you're working in a toxic environment, you can use that challenge to develop strength, to grow, and to bring out the best of who you are. We have come to the end of this episode of Sessions with Koren. I would like for you to check out our past episodes on YouTube and send your comments and questions. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to hearing from you. See you next week.